Happy to have you here. As I mentioned before we got started, I see you everywhere. You are truly out here making it happen, and I'm just very proud of you for everything you're doing in your career in sports. You're a trailblazer. 12 years
Thank
old,
you.
trailblazer, okay? So I'm just gonna head and go ahead and say that, okay?
Thank you.
Yeah. So I want to start off by listing off the things just in your Instagram bio. 12-year-old reporter, 2022 Ad Week Most Powerful Women in Sports, ESPN MLB Kids Cast, Aces Sideline Reporter, Clippers Kids Cast, host of Dish with Pepper, and author of Not to Anything book. That is loaded for anyone. Let alone 12 years old. Okay. So, again, you're making it happen out there. And I'm just so proud of you. And I know so many athletes and other journalists are proud of you. So, let's get into it.
Okay. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
Of course. So, I want to start off with what was your goal when you first started your reporting journey? Because I know a lot of times the awards and the accolades come over time, but they're not really the reason why we get into it. Clearly, you have
Right.
a stacked resume, but what was the
Right.
goal when you first started?
Yeah. So when I first started, well, my first interview, I was 6. So, and I mean, all kids at all ages, but especially like at that age, I had so many questions. And I was just starting to play basketball, and my parents were amazing, and my dad took me to WNBA games all the time. So I was very like conscious of that, and I just had a lot of questions about it because like I really like basketball. Like it makes sense. I have questions for the people who are doing it at the highest level. And my dad had a previous connection with the Liberty, so we kind of reached out just to see if I could like send in my questions, just because that would be like amazing, right, for a 6-year-old to get her questions answered by professionals doing what she loves. And they were like, "Why don't you come in and we'll like record it and you can interview her, Sugar Rogers, who I ended up interviewing like in person, face to face, like at the practice facility." It was an amazing experience. So I think it's always my journalism and reporting has always kind of been based in my own curiosity. But the next kind of big project I did was when I realized like so many more people are at NBA games, like so many more people watch that. Like why? And I wanted to do like a series of interviews just to promote the WNBA because I loved it. Why shouldn't everybody else? You know, that was probably at like 7 or 8, and then when I was 9, um, I was working through being bullied at school, and after that, after I kind of, like, overcame it a little bit, like, at school, I was like, "Why is this happening to me?" Like, I wonder if this has happened to anybody else and how they overcame it, and again, the first place I turned was to athletes, the WNBA, um, and that was kind of the next sort of thing I did, and then it kind of stopped for a little bit, and then the pandemic happened, and I was like, "This is awful," but it was honestly without that, I don't know if I would be where I am today because it allowed me to go to Zoom press conferences where I could talk to almost anybody and not worry about being able to be there. And it was a lot more open. It was really easily accessible. And through that, I was able to go to press conferences and kind of more consistently cover the WNBA and sports in general, just to try to bring attention to the stories and people that inspire me. So I've done a lot with sports journalism, but a lot of it is based in just my love for sports and my curiosity around it and wanting to highlight stories that inspire me.
Yeah. That's again incredible for you to have your first interview, like real deal interview at 6. Like, what were the emotions you were feeling? Were you nervous? Were you excited?
Yeah, I think I was definitely a little bit nervous, but I was mostly excited. I think, like, because that's kind of it's a really big deal, and I don't remember all of it, but I like going back and watching like the interview. Um, it just I looked like I was having so much fun, and I think that's always been the case for me. Like I'll be a little bit nervous before, but once I kind of get out, like on once it's like live, once I'm out on the stage, like whatever, then I really start to feel comfortable.
Yeah. What have been your favorite moments so far along the journey?
Yeah, I think you listed some of them. I have so many. I think doing the Aces sideline was a really awesome experience because that was like really coming to fruition what I really wanted to do. Like broadcasting like a WNBA game, like actually like and that was amazing. And the players, the organization, everybody, the Aces were amazing. Hosting me in Las Vegas for I did 2 games there, and I would love to do more. And then also doing the MLB Kids Cast for the past 2 years has been amazing because it really allows me to do what I also love to do in terms of my reporting, which is highlight kids and make stories accessible for kids. And that's what that's all about, which I absolutely love. Um, what else have I done? I at an event called Makers, which is basically this amazing, like massive event where basically a bunch of women who do not all in sports, like from all around the world to do all types of things kind of come together. And I was able to do an interview on the stage, but just being there at that event and kind of like soaking that in was amazing. Okay, so that's I was kind of do 5. And then I did the AMAs a couple years ago. I was the red carpet host for the Jennifer Hudson show because they had me on, and that was an amazing experience because I kind of got to move away from sports for a second. And I love like music and movies, like all of that. Like I love it too, and that was an amazing experience. Kind of doing not sports for a second, but still like doing what I love, asking questions. And then the most recent thing that's kind of happened is me writing a children's book, which I'm sure we'll talk about a little bit more later. But it was an amazing experience and a really long process. But I'm so excited that it's available for pre-order now, and that like I can share my story in a way that hopefully will positively impact kids.
Yeah, definitely want to talk about your book more, but I want to ask you about tapping into making stories or doing reporting that caters to kids, that kids can
Mm.
understand. What does that look like? Because growing up, I don't think I've ever read a newspaper article or seen a news story that I was like, oh, I understand this, or like, wow, this makes so much sense.
Yeah, I think the first thing is it being me, a kid in the first place, I think makes it, um, immediately, like, more accessible, and one thing that I almost always do when I'm doing interviews is I ask for advice because I think that's a question and answer that most kids can apply to themselves in whatever way, and that I have always loved asking for myself and for others, and I also will, like, ask questions based on kids, like, based on what athletes' experiences were as a kid, like, did you dream of making to whatever point as a kid? Like, what does it feel like to have fulfilled your childhood dream? Like, stuff like that where I can focus on kids, and what's great about that is being in press conferences, often people have questions and they'll end up getting asked, but for me, when I'm focusing on questions like that, not very rarely do other people kind of focus on that kid perspective, and I think that's really, really special to be able to, kind of portray that in a way.
Yeah, I think that's so cool. I just think of my niece, my nephew, they're in high school now, but they don't really follow the news. They don't really follow press conferences. And naturally, as a journalist, like we pay attention, we know what's kind of happening, but it's interesting to think that a question focused on advice or meeting your goals, how that really can help them wherever they are versus just like some deep question about, what happened pregame or what was the situation or can you talk about this incident? That doesn't really
Right.
speak to a 12-year-old, a high schooler the same way it could speak to someone older. So I think that's really good perspective that I never even thought about.
Right, I think the thing is that's so interesting about what I do too, is that it's not only questions for kids too, like, I will ask those questions, like, I watch basketball all the time, like, I can't like, I'll do, like, the high basketball IQ questions, but I think it's good to have a balance.
Right.
So when I'm putting together, like, clips and stuff, so there's maybe things that, like, I as a player am really asking, and then me as a kid is asking. I think it's really cool to kind of have that balance in a way.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that's another thing that just makes you such a good and complete journalist because I noticed that about you as well. Like when you're in the press conference, there's no difference. Like there's no situation where like Pepper is a kid and you have these other journalists who've been doing it for 20 years. It's like, no, your questions are solid. You can tell you've done your research. So when I say I'm proud of you, I mean it. Like, I know you don't know me like that, but like, I am so proud of you. And I know many other journalists are because you're really making it happen and you're showing what it can look like. It doesn't matter if you're 20 years in or 12 years old. Like, if you do the work and do the research, you can be a great journalist. So, shout
Yeah,
out to you again. I'm giving you
thank you.
your flowers all day. Okay.
Thank
Because
you,
you
alright.
absolutely deserve them. Yeah. So, and you also mentioned that you started your reporting and asking these questions because you had questions as a player. So, talk to me about your journey through basketball. I wasn't really familiar with the athlete side of Pepper.
Yeah, so I started playing basketball when I was 4, I think soccer around the same time, and those are my main 2 sports for a while. During the pandemic, I kind of, for better for worse, moved away from soccer. I was playing travel soccer, which is a lot of practices a week, and I think didn't really allow me to do everything else that I wanted to do. And basketball has kind of always been my favorite sport to play, and I think the one that I'm the best at. I've been playing it for the longest. I mean, since 4 years old, it's like 8 years for me because I'm 12 now. Um, and yeah, I played on my first team like games when right before the pandemic, so I think 8 or 9. And what was awesome about that experience was my dad was coaching, and I love that. And then sort of the pandemic kind of I took a dip, but I was practicing a lot just on myself, like ball handling in my apartment. And then when the pandemic kind of slowed down a little bit, I tried out for AAU teams, and I ended up playing on a team that wasn't kind of the right fit for me as a player, and was a lot more demanding than I want because, especially with the work that I do and all the other sports that I play in school, it's really hard to balance all that with a team that's really demanding in terms of practices and games. Like almost every weekend, I couldn't do anything else, and that was really hard for me. Um, it was also really hard for me because I was on the road to testing for my black belt in Taekwondo, which I did end up yeah, I got my black belt in
You
June.
do everything.
Um yeah. And that was something that I really wanted to do that that team was, like, not allowing me to do, and I loved playing, as much as I did, but it just wasn't quite the right fit, and I ended up switching teams in the spring, and that team was a lot better fit for me. Just less practices and practices during the week, and kind of tournaments, but not every weekend, and a lot more flexibility with me being able to do a softball tournament or go to a game and cover it and stuff like that, like I really want to do. Yeah, so that's for basketball. And then I recently, not recently, like after the pandemic, when I was like 9 or so, I started playing softball, which is my mom's sport. So I play Little League and on my district team, and she's the coach for that. And I love having my mom as my coach too. I think it's super cool having had both my parents as coaches. And softball is just another sport that I kind of fell in love with. Yeah, and then I started volleyball in the fall. Like I want to try all the sports. But I really love like basketball and softball are probably my favorite right now.
Wow. You just named so many sports. You named so many things, and you hit on balance. So, what does a typical week look like for Pepper with karate, with basketball, with reporting, with school, with softball? How do
Yeah.
you structure your week?
Yeah, so obviously school Monday through Friday. On Mondays, I'll just like do the rundown. Right now, I'm on winter break, which has been great because school is starting to pick up a lot of tests and quizzes. I was like, okay, this is a lot.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, when I go back on Monday, yep. So I have the rest of this week. Yeah, so on Mondays, usually I will have dance after I'm in
Damn!
dance as well.
Oh my
Yes.
just
And that's just one time a week. It's for my school. And then I in the fall and the spring, I have softball practice usually after that, but in the winter right now, I just have training on Sundays. And then Tuesday, Wednesdays are kind of my big days. I have school sports Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and AU for basketball Tuesdays and Wednesdays. Yeah, it gets to be a lot on those days, but I'm really working on handling it. I think it's going really well. And I also know like my coaches are aware, my parents are aware that if it gets to be a lot for me, especially if I have homework, or I'm studying for a test, like that's full stop. School comes first. And then on Thursday, I have Taekwondo, which is really cool actually because it's at like my elementary school. So basically, we go there and I work on more teaching than actually like doing practice for myself, which is really great because I go to an all girls school. So like all these girls like are really like I get to be like a role model for them, which is really special for me. Yeah, and then on Fridays is usually, like, my day off, so I have
good.
softball. Yeah, I have softball in the fall and the spring, but right now, winter training is just on Sundays. I'm in the winter for my AU team, though we will start to have games on Fridays, but for right now, I just kinda get get to go home and chill after. Oh, I do have PT, for my knee. That's a whole different story.
Wait,
Um,
wait. Okay, talk to me about the knee. Did it come from
yeah.
basketball?
No, well, partly, but it's more like growth pains.
Mm.
So it's the fact that it's growth pains and, like, running, but it's good. I'm growing, which is exactly what I want.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, yeah, and then Saturdays and Sundays aren't usually too busy. On Saturday, I have taekwondo, like, for me, practice, and on Sunday, I have training for basketball, but the rest of those days are usually pretty chill. So I know, like, it sounds like I do a lot, but I don't do everything every day, and I do have a decent amount of time to do homework, to study, to spend time with my family, to read, to do everything else too, so.
Yeah. And again, I know you cover a lot of professional sports and the topic of mental health always comes up. So in the midst of your schedule every week, what are some of the things you do to make sure you stay grounded and leveled mentally?
Yeah, I actually see a sports psychologist. That's something that I work a lot with her, and, I'm just kinda working on, like, trying to not be negative with myself because it gets to be a lot, like, if you think about it, like, throughout the day, through school, sports, like, I get a lot of feedback and not all of it's positive, so that's really hard to handle, but I think just, like, a lot of breathing, like, it sounds so simple, but it's really powerful, and kinda just focusing on, like, the positive things that I'm doing because a lot of it is positive, it just doesn't always feel that way, so I think it's a lot, but I also know that I can handle it and am handling it really well.
Yeah. I think you're handling it really well, at least from the outside looking in.
Yeah.
You're making it happen. So let's switch gears a little bit and talk about your book, Not to Anything.
Yeah.
I want to know, when did that idea come to you? When did you start writing? And what was the inspiration behind it?
Right. So the crazy thing is I never thought about writing a book, like, maybe, like, as an adult, but, publishers, Young Authors Publishing reached out to me and they were like, "Hey, your story is amazing. Like, is there any way you would want to write a children's book or any book with us?" And I was like, "That's so cool. Like, yes." So I started the writing process around like October, November, December of last year. So it's really basically been a whole year. And lots of different drafts, getting notes back from the editors, trying to make my story as good as possible. And basically, what the book is about is in second grade, my journey through being bullied and kind of how I overcame that and how I used that and like flipped it on its head and turned into the journalist and reporter that I am today. Kind of using that in a way to hopefully inspire any kids who are going through similar things or just kids and adults in general because everyone kind of has their own struggles. And, showing that through all that, I was able to have all the successes that I have had. Yeah, but the writing process was a long one, but never really felt that way until I started to like talk about it and think like, oh wow, like it really was a year. Like it's coming out on January 30th, which is really soon now that we're in January. And very exciting. Yeah. So the writing process, and then we kind of found they picked an illustrator, and she did an amazing job with the illustrations there. Like literally what I pictured in my head was exactly like what she did, which was amazing. Um, so yeah, so that whole process was basically a year now that it's coming out. Yeah, so it's available for pre-order now, like Amazon, Barnes and Noble, anywhere you would pre-order a book. And I'm really excited for people to be able to read it and hopefully be inspired by my story.
Yeah. So of course I haven't read the book yet, but everybody get the book. Get
Thank you.
get the book January 30th. But when I saw the title, I thought about people, especially girls and women in sports, being labeled too skinny, too aggressive, too tall, too this, too that. Have you ever
Right.
been given any of those labels that maybe were a part of inspiring the title?
Right. So I think the thing that sent me overboard through the course of being bullied was, and this wasn't the only thing that happened, but I was basically given this letter with all the things like that was like wrong with me, like
Oh,
too
wow.
bossy, too like
Wow.
there's I don't remember. I ripped it up, so I don't really have. I tried not to remember all this, but
Yeah.
too too bossy. Like, I feel like too happy, too passionate, like all of these things. Like, and the thing that really like topped it off for me is they said too athletic. Which and honestly, thinking about it now doesn't make any sense, and it sounds more like a compliment to me than anything because, like, okay, thank you, like, I am athletic, that's something I take pride in, like, I love being an athlete, But in the moment, that really hurt me because these kids were also athletes. Like we played soccer against each other. Like I thought that was like a connection point for us, but clearly I
Yeah.
was too whatever for them to really think that. And so, kind of this project that I talked about before, which where I interviewed people about their experience being bullied, I called that "Not Too Athletic,"
Mm.
because it was mainly surrounding sports. But now for this story, I wanted anybody to be able to reach it. Like you said, there's so many ways to
Yeah.
phrase that. People can call you to anything.
Right.
Um, and that's why I wanted people to know, like, you're not to anything. You're just right being the way you are. And I feel like that's a common thing for people to say to try to size someone up and make them feel bad about something that maybe that makes them feel really good. And I think that's awful. And so I want people to know that they're not to anything and they're just right.
Yeah. Just right. I love that. And when it comes to just where you are now in your process, seeing a sports psychologist, having overcome so much, what does your friendship circle look like? Because I know sometimes after experiencing certain things, it can be hard to trust, to be open to different friendships, close relationships. So, have you been able to foster a group of friends, a group of peers that you really feel like is a safe space for you?
Yeah, I think a big part of that was I did, switch schools, so I'm at a different school than, where all of that happened, and I think a big thing is through sports, I've developed a lot of friendships. I think that's one thing I love about team sports is even try if you're trying to or not, you go through so much together that you really start to develop those connections, and I love my, like, sports friendships more than anything, but at school, I have a lot of really close friends as well, and I think one thing I love about my school and my grades specifically is like you see on TV, like the popular kids and the jocks, like that's not really anything that happens. I feel like at real school, and I love how close we are as a grade. I go to private school, so we're smaller, so there's like 60 kids in a grade-ish.
Nice.
I feel like we're all like there's nobody like that hates each other. Like it's like a really good um like place to be in, like for like having gone through what I went through. But the close friends that I have right now I think are really good. So yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. I'm glad you're able to have that safe space in those friendships with everything you've overcome. I feel like that's so important to have a solid community where you feel like you can be yourself and not have to worry about any of that bullying or anything like that. So, switching gears, let's talk about Pepper, the person behind the journalist, behind the author, behind those titles. What are some of your hobbies outside of sports?
Yeah. I think a big thing for me is music. I love listening to music. I play the guitar. Yeah, that's another thing. Yeah, I listen to music all the time. It's just definitely a really like safe space for me. So that's definitely one thing that I love. I love like watching shows and movies. I'm a big Marvel fan.
Mm,
I love like playing games with my family. I have a dog, CJ. He's like my best friend out of all of the people.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
uh, and I love spending time with him, and I've been able to do more of that over my break. What else do I like? I love reading. I don't often get to read a lot because I'm reading books for school, but over the break, I started to read books, and I forgot how much I loved it.
you
Reading books that I choose. Yeah, I think, yeah, I think music is a big one for me. I like going to concerts, like all that stuff. So, um, yeah, I love spending time with my friends, like, all that. When I do have the time, like, that is probably my go-to is probably listening to music, playing the guitar, like, hanging
do.
out with my friends, my family, like, doing all of that, yeah.
Yeah. Who are some of your favorite artists?
Yeah, so, I love Taylor Swift. I'm a Swiftie. Right
Nice.
now, I've been listening to a lot of SZA. I think I really like some of my friends got me onto her, and I think she's amazing.
Yeah.
And seems like she's very, like, real. And who else do I like? I like Rihanna. I like Sabrina Carpenter. I went to her concert. I also met her at the AMAs actually, so that was really cool.
Wow.
Um, wow, I feel like there's so many people that I really like. I'm probably missing a bunch of them. I went to a Harry Styles concert before last school year.
Yeah.
Yeah. Another artist I really like is Tate McRae. She's like kind of new-ish, but I'm going to her concert in August too, which was a Christmas present for me. Yeah. But I listen to a lot of music. I like Nicki Minaj too. She's like the majority of my pregame playlist.
I was
Yeah.
gonna ask you, what are you listening to before games? So it's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, but I'll do like I listen to a lot of music. I listen to music with my parents that maybe wouldn't immediately be on my playlist, but
Yeah.
like Prince, like Stevie Wonder, like a lot of those people I love too. I went to a Janet Jackson concert, too. Yeah. So I've been yeah. So I like music is a pretty big deal for me, yeah. I think right now I've been listening to a lot of SZA and Rihanna, so that's kind of where I'm at right now.
I feel like you have such a cool life. Like a Janet Jackson concert
Yeah.
is huge. Janet is not even really out there performing like that. So the fact that you got in there, like that is huge. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And the fact that like you're listening to Prince, Stevie Wonder, shout out to your parents because
Yeah. Yeah, oh yeah, they're amazing.
I feel like over time, especially when I'm on TikTok, I'm like, it feels like unless a song goes viral on TikTok, the younger
Yeah.
generation may never know the greatness from the past. So
Mhm.
shout out to your parents for making sure that you're aware
Yeah.
of the legends in music. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny because sometimes we'll be in the car and, like, I'll have, like, Taylor Swift, and I'll be like, "Who doesn't like our music?" And I'm like, "Yeah," like, I think it's really important to have that kind of diversity because, like, you can't listen to an artist forever. I mean, some people you can. I feel like Taylor Swift is one of those people. She has, like, 10 whole albums, and all of them are, like, kind of different, but I think it's good to have diversity in your music taste, and my parents definitely fostered that in me.
Yeah. I love that. Okay. What's one food you cannot live without?
Oh my gosh, I feel like there's so many. Um, okay, I'll give you a couple. One is, like, solid pepperoni pizza, like New York pizza, like yeah, and I could probably eat that every day even though it would be probably bad for me. I'm also a big breakfast person, so, like, pancakes, eggs, sausage, like, all of that I love too. Um, what else? My mom my mom cooks a lot for us, and I think she's been doing more of that, and I absolutely like, I love when she cooks. We just had, a family friend over and or family over, and we did, like, a taco night, which I think we do a lot when there are guests, and it always is so good, like, you do, like, a little assembly line, like, make your own tacos, and I love when she does that. She makes really good chicken noodle soup when you're feeling sick or just, like, whenever. Um, there's so many things. I love my mom's cooking.
Good.
Oh yeah, for Christmas, she's amazing. She does like shrimp and grits. And yeah, I love grits. It's so good, right? And like she did like arugula and spinach salad. Like it was, yeah, she's amazing. So I always love a good home cooked meal, but like if not, like pizza, a solid cheeseburger, like sushi. Like I'm not super like I'll eat most things. I'm not super picky, but like I will go for the kind of basic foods. Yeah.
Yeah, your mom sounds like a five-star chef, okay? Everything you just mentioned, I'm like, wow, I would eat that right now. That sounds great. Okay. You said you watch a lot of movies and shows. What genre
Mhm.
do you enjoy the most?
Yeah, I think, like, I'm a big like I said, a big Marvel person, so, like, action for sure. But I'll do, like, a solid mystery, like, I'm trying to think of, like, some of my favorite movies or shows. I feel like I've watched a lot, like, a lot of the Marvel movies, one of my favorite movies too is Ocean's 8,
Oh,
which my dad introduced me to, and I'm like, "Wow, this is really good."
yeah.
Um I think about that one a lot. I don't know. I don't what did I just watch? We just finished watching What If, which is a Marvel show.
Okay.
Yeah, but I've been trying to read more than watch TV over the break, so working on that. But yeah, I love Marvel, yeah.
Yeah. What's the most recent book you read?
Yeah, actually, right now I'm reading a book called The Seven Husbands of Emily Hugo, and I just started it. But I was like 2 pages in, like the main character is like a biracial reporter, like me, and I was like,
Wow.
that's amazing. So
Wow.
she's basically like, without spoiling, she basically gets the opportunity to interview Evelyn Hugo, who is like this like big time like 60s actress. Like she was like, and she's like, I'm finally ready to tell my story, and she picks her.
Wow.
I thought that that was really cool. Like she's like me, like, old like, that's exactly, like, what I do. I think that's really cool. Yeah, so I'm kind of in the process of reading that, which I'm really excited about. Yeah,
Yeah.
so
Who would be a dream interview if you could put yourself in that book? Who's someone you would be thrilled to tell their story?
oh my gosh, I feel like there's so many people in terms of, like, athletes that I haven't interviewed that I would love to like, my go-tos, like, Simone Biles and Serena Williams. I think they're just, like, the literal goats.
And see,
Um,
yeah.
right, so those 2 are big for me, and then in terms of, like, not athletes, I would say Taylor Swift, Zendaya, I absolutely love her. Like, another, like, amazing biracial woman. She's, like, incredibly talented at, like, literally everything she does. Um, Yeah, those are probably, like, my big 2 for both, like,
Yeah.
sports and yeah, non-sports. Yeah.
I'm sure those are coming. Like, I feel like you're right there. You probably already met someone who is like one text message away from them, so I just feel like it's on the way. I feel like
Yeah.
it's on the way.
I hope so.
Yeah. Who was the first WNBA player or team that you really looked up to? I know you mentioned some connections to the Liberty. Was that where it kinda started for you?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, they're my hometown team. They were the first, like, WNBA game that I went to was at, Madison Square Garden when they still played there. So I think I've always, like, definitely deep down been a Liberty fan, but, after the experience that I had with the Aces doing sideline reporting for them, I definitely have a soft spot for that team too. And Natasha Cloud of the Mystics, she was someone who actually reached out to me during while I was being bullied and was like FaceTime me, like, actually, yeah. She was someone that I interviewed when I was doing that too, so I've always had a really amazing connection with her. I mean, so many players, like, the crazy thing about the WNBA is that, like, literally every single one of them, like, most of them, like, I know or I've talked to, and they're all, like, amazing. The whole league, honestly, like, I feel like if I keep picking more players, like, I'm missing people, but yeah, those are probably, like, 2 biggest teams and players, but, like, all of them, honestly.
Yeah. What is something you would want people to know about Pepper that they may not be able to pick up from your Instagram or your forward-facing work?
Yeah, I think that like, as much as it seems like I do a lot of work for journalism, but it's not always like, I love science and math and history, I love school, like, I love learning. Not always homework and tests, but I try. Um, and that I really I'm a dog person, that's really important. Like we talked about, like, I love music, and what's most important for me for what I do for journalism is telling stories that, like, if I wasn't who I am, like, watching that, I would be impacted by, like, that's my
Mhm.
biggest goal, and if you, like, at all, like, feel a connection to what I do, like, just tell me, like, that's all, like, I would love to hear that, and even if not, like, I will continue to do the work that I'm doing because I think it's really important, and there's not a lot of kids like me in this space, and I would love for there to be more of them.
Yeah. Awesome. And I always like to end on this question. Who is someone who has been instrumental in your success who you have not had the chance to tell? Who is the person and what is your message?
Hmm. Well, first off, more a general note, I do have someone, but, I feel like, especially in sports media, like, there's a growing amount of Black women who are kind of in those roles, and I'm lucky to say, like, I have so many, like, big sisters and aunties within the space that it's really hard for me to list them. And someone who's not a journalist, my mom. I think I she's someone who she's my comfort, like, I always go to her whenever, like, I'm feeling like I'm missing out on something, like, if I need help with anything, like, I go to her, and she is, like as my softball coach, I feel like I love having her in that role as well, and she's, like, just incredible to me, she inspires me every day, and also my dad, who kind of, like, came into this role of, like, being my dadager, as we
Yeah.
like to call him, in a space where neither of us really knew what to do, and we've kind of worked through that together. And sometimes it's hard to, like, figure out, like, what to do with kind of next steps for me in my career, but he's always trying to figure it out, and when I'm at school, like, he's working on cutting up the podcast, like, when I don't necessarily have the time, and I really I don't say it enough, but I really appreciate the fact that he does that. So I think both of my parents I am really grateful for, and I could always be more grateful for.
I love that. I think that's so true. It's like we're so grateful, but it's like we can always be even more grateful when we think about
Right,
literally everything they've done for us since day one. So,
right.
anything that you would like to add that maybe I didn't ask about your book, about you in general?
No, yeah, I think this was super fun, like, I never really get to tell the non-journalist sports side of Pepper. Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me right now is pre-order Not To Anything, out January 30th, which I'm so excited about. Yeah, thank you so much for having me, this was so much fun.